Hello everyone, good morning. Welcome to DORS CLUC conference and welcome to FAIR. Currently you're in the black hole that we call it, and that's why it's called the black hole track. I'm Marin, I'll be your moderator today, and I just wanted to say that we'll have 3 lectures. After each lecture you'll be able to ask questions and the speaker will repeat it for the stream and then answer it. The first topic, as you can see, it's evolving your app is a pragmatic approach, and it will be held by Nicolas Fränkel. So please welcome him with 1 applause. Thank you.
Hi everybody, thanks to be here. Dober dan. Jeboti pasmater. Oh yes. No, I shouldn't have said that. Somebody told me it was to say hello in Croatian. I knew it. Yeah, I know that. So thanks to be here. I'm Nicolas Fränkel. I have 30 minutes, so I will skip the introduction. Nobody cares about me anyway. You are here for the talk, not for the speaker. Okay. I assume if you are here, it's because you have created or you are planning to create an HTTP API. And if you had done it in the past, there were multiple issues. Well, first, regular project issues. You had changing requirements. You had limited budget. You have a very tight schedule. Then you need to think about designing your entities to find the domain boundaries. Then you have this kind of stuff that's called REST, and people don't know exactly what it is. There are conflicting information. Nobody knows for sure, no specification. So you had to think a lot about put and post and patch and all those HTTP return codes. Well, you thought about all of those things, but some things were outside your scope. And actually, one of the issue is versioning. So when your project manager comes to you and say, hey, let's do the V2, you might react like that, and it's not cool. So in this talk, I want to give you a couple of tips and tricks so that when people ask you to do the V2 or the V3 or whatever, you will have a much better reaction. So first, we shall agree. This is your initial situation, right? You have like an upstream and you have a couple of endpoints and clients call the endpoints, right? Right? Yes, thanks. Well, you all lied. I hope none of you expose their APIs directly on the internet. You have a reverse proxy in front, right? Right, okay. So you tell me right on 2 different slides that are completely opposite to each other. Right, okay, yeah. Odlično. Okay, and I am a developer advocate, and I will tell you, you can solve all your problems with my solution. My solution is an API gateway. I'm a developer advocate. That's what I'm doing, right? I'm telling you, use it, and it will solve all your problems. Of course, I'm a bit exaggerating, but it's not far from the truth. So, just as a bit of background, what would be the difference between a reverse proxy and an API gateway? Functionalities, okay. Well, first talk of the day, okay. A bit of background. As you can see, I'm I'm experienced. So I already started to use the internet before the years 2000. Yes, some of you were not even born, perhaps. My first website was HTML. At the time, there was no Google, no nothing, no YouTube videos to tell you how to do your stuff. So basically, I learned HTML by checking the source of all the sites. We already had images at the time. We had those like stupid MIDI audio files that played when you enter this. You know what I mean, right? Everybody did it. Yeah, that was really poor user experience, right? And animations all the way, yeah, stupid GIFs, and also in construction. You always had to have an image in construction, especially if it was animated. No CSS, so we had to use tables to have nicely looking buttons. And is there any JavaScript developer here? Sorry for that. At the time, we had no JavaScript. For me, that was much better. For you, perhaps not. But anyway, at the time, I didn't think much about it. But I just put my files on a folder, and it worked. But behind it, there was a web server that was serving those static files. And somebody decided, oh, perhaps it's not enough. We should do better. Actually, we could automatically generate the HTML page because we would love to have the timestamp. Right? Useless. Last generated or last updated timestamp was much better, but anyway, it's the same. And at first, we did it with Perl. Well, I'm not a Perl developer. And even for maintenance, it's pretty crappy because you had to understand what the Perl script generates and to understand in your head how it will look like. If it's a bit long, it's not that great. It's better for the stream if I speak closer to the mic. So somebody decided, hey, let's create PHP. So you would just have the HTML page, a couple of tags that would be interpreted by mod PHP, and it would work. By the way, PHP doesn't mean hypertext preprocessor, it means personal homepage. Sorry for you. Sorry for PHP developers. And then it became quite popular. The web was not only for geeks who wanted to have their own personal website, it was also for companies. Companies started to think, there is potential there, let's create our communication channel. And for a dev, for a personal website, you don't care if your site is down. But it's down. For a company, that's about their image. So they wanted to build resiliency features. And so you didn't only have your regular web server serving stuff, you had another layer of web server that didn't serve anything. They just did load balancing between similar nodes. And afterwards, then came the extranet, the intranet, the whatever net. The nodes were not similar anymore. So you added one more functionality to this second layer of web servers that didn't serve anything, that was routing. And so that's the evolution of the web server throughout the ages. First, you served static content, then you served dynamic content, then you did load balancing, then you did routing. And then if you are an architect or a solution architect or whatever, you say, oh, there is nice. This is a common entry point. Let's push even more feature to this second layer. Let's push rate limiting. Let's push caching. Let's push whatever. There are seats in the front if you want. Okay. And in parallel, we wanted to share information. We wanted to share data, to exchange data with other companies. And I believe everybody has has created a file, sent it to an FTP server. Then on the other side, there was a batch that would read the folder and then would rename it to done. And yeah, but it's great. It works. But if we want synchronous data exchange, we want to do better. And because every company has their own tech stack, it's very hard to assume that the company you want to exchange data with has the same. So we have to rely on like the root, a common root, which is HTTP, which is the basis for APIs. And that's the reason for the API gateway. The API gateway, my definition of API gateway is a specialized reverse proxy. An API gateway can and should be able to do everything a reverse proxy can, but then adds features that are focused on APIs. My very common example is always the same. A reverse proxy has rate limiting because you don't want to be DDoSed, right? Okay, but now every of the clients, it's considered the same client. Every client has the same limit. However, when you have APIs, not every client is treated the same. Some clients are privileged. Some clients can call more because they paid something, because whatever. And so, though it would be possible to have a reverse proxy, with those rules implemented, this is business logic. And business logic changes very, very often. Or at least randomly. So if you have an Nginx, you want to change the business logic, first you create your own custom C module, then you change the C module, and then you need to switch it off and on again, because it's not easy to change the configuration of Nginx at runtime. API gateways, they have zero downtime by essence. You can change their configuration by essence, and then you can set business logic in them. There are a couple of API gateways on the market. I obviously work for Apache API 6, but here are our competitors. Just to slide on Apache API 6, I will have a demo. You can do all the demo with other API gateway, but I will use Apache API 6 because it's the one I'm familiar with. So it's an Apache project, open source, Apache v2 license. It's built on Nginx, which is itself open source. Again, as I mentioned, the problem of Nginx, you cannot change the configuration easily. At least you need to switch it off and again. So in order to do that, there is a layer called OpenResty, which is a Lua JIT layer. It allows you to change the configuration through Lua dynamically. Then you have API 6 core, and it allows for plugins. So everything in Apache API 6 is plugin based. So that's my solution. Let's have an API gateway and everything will work as expected. Now I will have to call my assistant to hold my mic because unfortunately I don't have, like famous speakers, they have an assistant. Thanks, Bobour. Yeah, applause for Bobour. You should hold like this, close to my mouth. So here I have my, closer please. Thanks. Closer? Thanks. Yeah, now you will be a professional mic holder. Here I have my architecture, so I'm using Docker Compose. I have API 6. Latest version. I have etcd, so basically API 6 stores its configuration in etcd. etcd is a distributed key value store, the same one used by Kubernetes. Then I have the dashboard, so if I have time I can show you the dashboard. I have Prometheus because I want to monitor every one of my routes. Grafana to display it. Then I have my old API that I want to replace with my new API. Any Java developer here? 1, 2, 3. Wow, okay. Yeah, 3. I counted you. So here I have my old API, and I rewrote everything with Kotlin because, yeah, Kotlin is so much better. So, no, you don't believe me? I love Kotlin. The important stuff is not that. The important stuff is I want to have a stupid demo. So since you are not Java developer, the code itself is not that important. Thanks. But basically, in the old API, I have lots of annotations, and Java developers, the modern ones, they say, oh, annotations are not that good. So I replaced everything with Kotlin. I only have one single annotation. So it's much better, obviously. Feature-wise, and now the fun part is I need everything, yes, started the old application. So now let's see how it works. Curl local host 8081/hello. Amazing. Applause. Thanks. And now for the improvement. Improvement doesn't work, so it didn't start. So now comes the fun part. I need to Docker stop the Docker Compose, stop the old API, the new API, sorry, that doesn't work. And I have this issue with Docker sometimes and the JVM, so it's not super great, especially during the demo. And I start the new API. And normally after some times it should do something, so Spring Boot is starting. And let's wait a bit. Okay. No JVM on containers, please. Never, yes. Here it should work. So as I mentioned here, it should be much better. Yes, it's much better, right? So this is the improved hello world. Okay, great. Now I told you I have an API gateway, so everything should be better. I will call it, and nothing works. Nothing works because the API gateway has not been initialized. I need to configure it, as I mentioned. So I will configure it with Apache API 6. I configure the API gateway with an API call, obviously. So everything will be on GitHub. I have the reference at the end, so you can use it. I don't want you to install curl if you don't have it. So here, you just need to have Docker. So I'm using the curl image to do a curl. Then I'm using the route, which is called API 6 admin routes, with the ID of the put. So I will create a new route. Because it's a sensitive operation, I need to pass the API key. It's not the only way to secure your API gateway, but here that's the one I'm using. And of course, I'm using the default key, which is really, really bad. Then I pass the payload. The name is optional. The methods and the URIs are important because if API 6 detects those two matches, it will use this route. So if it receives a get with /hello, /hello/ or /hello/store, it will forward the call to this route. And then this route has an upstream. The upstream has a single node at the moment called old API. Of course, normally you should have multiple nodes. But again, it's a demo. And finally, because everyone wants it to be monitored, I have this plugin Prometheus. So if I run it and I curl again, it works. Amazing. I'm back to square one. Great. Okay, so thanks. Stay there, but I will walk a bit, but I will do the demo just afterward. Just stay there. Stay there. No, you can stay there. Okay, so my problem now is I want to version. And I want people to start using my version. So I need to introduce a new route. There are multiple ways to version your APIs. The first, the one that I will be using in this demo is the path. I will add a prefix v1, v2, v whatever. Great. Another way is to use a header. Third way is use a query parameter. You can use whatever you want with Apache API 6, but because it's more visual, I use the prefix. Thanks. That's teamwork. We are teammates, by the way. Just in case you didn't notice it. The thing, at the moment, I created a route. I directly embedded everything, but we have some abstractions that we can reuse. Actually, the upstream, we want to reuse the upstream for multiple routes, probably. So the idea is that Apache API 6 provides this abstraction. So here, I have a new route, upstreams. It's still a put with the ID, so I can create it. Now I want every route. I did a big boo-boo here. I want every route to be monitored without telling it explicitly every time. Because if I ask it to be explicitly told, at some point somebody will forget it, that's for sure. So I can add a global rule, which basically is a plugin that will be applied to every route. It can be disabled on a route on a by case basis, but by default, every one of my routes will be monitored. That's a second, and then I create the version route. So I will create a new route that will reference the upstream that I've just created. Something important, I will also need to do something. I will need to remove the v1 prefix, because before it was easy, I forwarded /hello and it worked. Now if I have v1 /hello and I forward it, the upstream doesn't know about v1. So I need to remove the prefix, and in Apache API 6, it's done through a plugin called proxy rewrite. There is a regex, we remove the v1. So now if we write that, and, here, and I call it again, not this one, not this one. Yes, v1. It works, amazing. So now we have two routes. Yeah, that's the reason why you shouldn't sit in the back. You don't see anything, right? It sucks. Better like this? Okay, great. Let me do it like this. And then I put it a bit upward, and I clear again. Better? Perfect. But now you learn the lesson. Next time you will be seated in front. Great. Okay, now we have two routes. The problem is that people will still be using the two routes. 5 minutes, I have 5 minutes. Are you kidding me? I started super late. Shall we agree for 15 minutes? Let's make it 12 and we are friends. Okay, perfect. So now we have two routes. The problem is with these two routes, people will still be using the unversion one. So we need to tell them. But we don't know them because we didn't ask them to register before. We were so happy by providing our API, we just gave it to the world. We don't know our clients, we don't know our users. So the only way to communicate with them is through HTTP. So what we will be doing is we'll be using 301 code. So let's do it. Now I'm super stressed because how can I do it? So I will be updating the route number 1 with a patch, and I will add a plugin called redirect, right? So basically I will be redirecting the first route to the v1/URI. And now I have an end on my screen. Crazy. Okay? Now you're a witness, right? So now when I call the v1 without, when I call the unversion route, sorry, without the v1, it tells me, hey, move permanently. So as a lesson, if you are an API consumer, you should also monitor your calls, not only if you are an API provider, because this is a thing that can happen. But you can tell me, hey, but we are very smart, and I don't doubt it. We are doing automatic redirect. It still works, but now you have 2 calls. So you spend twice the amount of resources to do the same. So always monitor your stuff. Perfect. But now it highlighted a problem. We don't know our users. We should know our users. So we should ask them to register, give out their email so we can communicate with them. Who here likes to give their email? Or you're lying? Come on. You like to give your email? Ah, fake email. So you don't like it. You're trying to find ways not to give your regular email. Okay, but still in the end, So you don't get what you want and I don't get what I want. So the idea is we should provide a way to, let's say, lead nice developers like you to give out their emails. Nice developers, they love free stuff. So I love free stuff, you love free stuff. So I will change my API a bit. I will say, okay, now if you don't register, you can still use the API, you will be rate limited. If you give out your email, that's fine, continue using our API. Now you have your email. I can send you pretty shitty marketing emails, which I shouldn't do, but I can also like communicate with you and give you, hey, we are changing our API, be careful. There is no plugin for that in Apache API 6. However, I've created my own plugin. So the first thing is I can rate limit you. And I used the rate limit plugin and I added my custom logic in Lua, which is like 6 lines of Lua code. I'm not a Lua developer, but I won't show you the code. First, because there might be Lua developer in the room and I will be ashamed. And second, because the gentleman told me I don't have that enough time. So. Okay, great. So now if I call again the v1, I'm rate limited. Doesn't work anymore. Okay? But suppose I register, and this is outside the scope of this talk. Of course, the URL here doesn't work. This is outside the scope of this one. I can create a consumer. So in Apache API 6, a consumer is an ID, is a user that can like be authenticated, and we can apply some restrictions or like permissions to it. Here I'm using the most stupid consumer plugin there is, key auth. Basically, key auth is if I have an API key named API key with value my key, it means I'm John Doe. You can use OpenID Connect, you can use CLUC, you can use whatever you want. There are plugins for a lot of systems, but here it's a demo, so I want to do it like this. So now, if I curl and I have API key, my key, I'm not rate limited anymore because I registered. Great. Time to deploy our V2, right? So we should deploy our V2, and we tested it. Who does unit testing here? 1 person? No, 2 person, 3 person, 4 person. If I wait a bit more, there will be perhaps 5 persons. Who says 5? Yeah, 5 person, thanks. Who does integration testing? The same people. Oh, so in Croatia you don't test. Okay, no, okay, that's fine. Who tests in production then? Yeah, everybody else, right? But guess what? Even if you do testing, you test in production anyway, because your test cases, you are not sure that the production all will mimic the stuff. So I will do the same. I will actually deploy it. And what I'm doing, before testing in production, I will duplicate the load and send it to the V2 as well. And I will monitor the response code. And because I monitor the response code, I check that the response code are the same with the V1 and the V2. Let's do it a couple of times. So I guess the people who came to the room are wondering why I didn't finish my talk. The answer is because I started late. But it's a very good talk. So you should attend the rest of the talk anyway. And there are seats in the front in case. Great. So I didn't show you the Apache API 6 dashboard because I didn't have time. But now I can show you. No, that's muscle reflexes. Here I am using the Grafana dashboard from Apache API 6. So everything is the same. I just added those 2 widgets. Anybody has ever created a Grafana dashboard? Yeah, it's really bad, huh? Really, really bad. And you see here, I have the same curves. So probably my V1 and my V2, they do the same stuff. But I can do better. I can do even better. I can do canary releases. Piat. 5 minutes. No deal. We cannot negotiate anymore. 5 more minutes. You are the boss. I should negotiate with you. Great. So now we can do canary releases because we have managed to see that the curves are the same. So now instead of just discarding the response and just checking the return code, we can return the response to the client. And of course, you shouldn't do it all in one go. You should do canary releases. There are multiple ways to do canary releases. You can use a header. You can use geographical location. You can use a percentage. You can use whatever you want. Here, I will be using a percentage. And because it's a demo, I use half a percentage, which is not a great idea. So here, I am split trafficking. So here, I've created the V2, the upstream, and here I'm using the upstream ID, and I send half. So here, half of the people who are calling for V1 will receive V2. Of course, you shouldn't start with 50%. It's just because, well, it's a demo. Finally, we can create the V2. And now we have 2 problems. Well, we have one big problem. We have 2 versions in parallel. 2 versions in parallel is okay. But the more versions you add, the less resources you have on each version. So if you're a product manager or director of engineering, it's not great. So we need to remove our V1 version at some point. So how do we do it? Thanks, I will finish that. Thanks. How do we do it? there isn't anything about HTTP that works for us. However, there is an IETF draft. It's about the deprecation header. Deprecation header can be either a Boolean, which shouldn't be done. I did it in the demo, again, because I'm lazy, or a date that should be set in the future. And you are telling people, hey, after this date, you shouldn't use this stuff anymore. Then you have a link that points to the new API that you want people to use. And then if you really want to go the extra mile, there is a sunset error saying, hey, at this date, in the future, we will cut the service altogether. Well, that's super easy. This one is super easy. And again, it's a plugin, and it's called Response Rewrite. So I just removed the traffic splits. I run it, and now if I call the view 1, if I call the view 1, let's make it verbose. You can see in the deprecation header I have true, and in the link I have what I called. And that's the end. We just missed one single step, the last step. Enjoy. Because at this stage, I hope that if you have managed to implement all the steps that I've shown you, the next time your business comes for free, it will be like a walk in the park. Thanks for your attention. You can follow me on Twitter. You can follow me on Mastodon. You can read my blog. If you are interested in about the code, everything is on GitHub. And finally, if I got you interested in Apache API 6, you are welcome to check the website. We also have a Slack. We are nice people. And thanks a lot. Do we have time for questions? Oh, I asked the boss, but okay. So do we have time for questions? Yes. Is there any questions? That's too bad, because I had like stickers and chocolate and badge for good questions. No questions? Thanks a lot.